Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. As we keep reading through Mark chapter 5 this week, today we're going to look at what people did, both what they got right and what they got wrong. And so we're kind of familiar with it, but this is once again kind of a tutorial, kind of how to way, kind of taking a step back and walking through how we would go about doing it. And we want to ask those two questions. What did people get right? What did people get wrong? To figure out what people got right. Does God affirm what they did? Is there a blessing that stems from it? Is it does Jesus applaud them? Does he correct them if they got it wrong? And so we can look through and kind of go and each character, if you will, it's a historical character, but can still refer to them as characters, and see how it is that God responds. How much of what they did aligned with what Jesus was doing, with what Scripture says, and how much goes contrary to it. So if we look the in Mark chapter 5, the first guy is kind of passive at first, because he lived in the tombs and he was possessed by an unclean spirit, and so it wasn't the man that went and cried out. It was instead a legion that was within him, and so he passive. Jesus cast the demon out without there really being any faith in the traditional sense, because although the demons obviously believed and shuddered, they did not ask to be cast out. In the sense, they did not ask for the man to be healed. But so once the demon is cast out, though, or the demons are cast out, then the man comes to his senses, and so at that point, he rightfully, or at least we think rightfully, he wants to go with Jesus. He begged earnestly. So that's something that throughout Scripture we see affirmed over and over again, is people desiring to go with God and follow Him and give their life. But then we see in His context, Jesus said, "No, go home and tell people how God has had mercy on you." And so here we see another affirmation that he went and did what Jesus said to do. He began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him. And so giving testimony to what God had done is something that is affirmed here in the scriptures. The next person we get to is Jairus. And Jairus, although it doesn't say that he came in faith, Jesus doesn't mention his faith. He obviously had heard about Jesus and he reached out to Jesus. Once again, something that is affirmed over and over again. And the fact that Jesus was going with him, that that shows that he was in the right. Like he came with at least a neutrality, if not a faith, although not expressed, to where Jesus would go with him. Jesus didn't ask qualifying questions. He didn't say, "No, but you don't really believe," and so he knew who to turn to, and he reached out to Jesus. But then the next person that comes in onto the scene is the woman, and the woman had faith. The woman did what she needed to do. The woman rightfully went to Jesus and had faith enough to believe, and so he ends up healing her. And he says, "Your faith has saved you. Go in peace and be healed from your affliction." So we know that not only having faith, but also putting the faith into action, in going to Jesus and touching the hem of his garment. And so it's one thing to proclaim to have a faith, but it's something else to also put the steps that are involved in it. Not saying that it becomes then a works-based thing. It remains in faith, but a lot of times God calls us to action, demonstrating the faith that we profess. And so that's what she did right. We don't see anything that she did wrong. Like where Jesus says, "Who touched me?" It's not that he was chiding her necessarily, but he was calling attention, I think, once again, for the audience around, so that everybody would know what was going on and he could use it as a teaching moment. And so then we have, then we have also Jairus, as we continue on. Whenever everybody else came and said, "Hey, leave him alone," Jesus said, "No, look, don't be afraid, only believe." And so Jairus kept pursuing it, even though he probably had fear, trepidation, even though he's approaching the house, and people have told him that his daughter's already died. He still had faith enough to continue on with Jesus, or he had that last grasp of hope and anticipation, and just he knew that was the only recourse that he had. And so he does right in keeping pursuing. What people did wrong, whenever the people that owned the herds, whenever the townspeople heard that the pigs were cast into the sea, they tried to drive Jesus out. They said, "Look, go on, get away from here." And so they acted not in belief; they acted in selfishness. They acted in, I mean, who knows what other miracles Jesus could have performed? Who knows what they could have learned if he had stayed and they sat under his teaching? Who knows what could have happened if they hadn't let the inconvenience of the moment, or if they hadn't let the loss of this personal property override the blessings that took place in this man's life and what Jesus had done. The crowds or the disciples were not the ones that were in the right. Whenever they said, "How can you say who touched me?" Like, do they not know who Jesus is yet? Like, they still, and not to get on them too hard. We do that too. We know who Jesus is and we know what he can do, but sometimes we're like, okay, but really, and so the disciples did not act in faith or did not attribute to Jesus that he could possibly know. And so the also with the down below, once again, it's the opposite. Those that did not have faith, those that did not believe, that it's like, no, look, it's too late. It's too late. Instead of knowing that Jesus, it's not too late for Jesus, and that he can heal, and that he could raise them from this little girl from the dead even. And so we have positive affirmations, and over again, it is a faith that is involved, whether it's the faith to follow Jesus, to leave everything and to follow him, whether it's the faith to reach out and touch a garment, the faith to go to him and ask him to come and heal a girl, the faith to continue on when everybody else says, no, it's too late, the faith to keep on pressing on and keep on holding close to Jesus. And so faith over and over again is affirmed, and lack of faith or straying from Jesus is or doubting him is over and over again denied. And so as we look at what they did, it encourages us along the lines of faith, and hopefully strengthens and challenges us to believe in him, not just to say it, but to back it up with actions, and to keep holding on even whenever everybody else says to give up. Because the more we grow closer to him, and we draw near to him, the more that we see how good he is. Let's keep reading the Bible together. Love you, Eastwood family.